Okay, so belt drive. That's what we need to deal with, I guess. Uh, so this is the idler, and it came in its plastic, so I wasn't overly impressed with that. So I have the original metal one here, and that's the original bearing shell. And then I have a bearing here that will fit inside the shell. So I'm probably going to MacGyver that together, just because I'd rather have a metal pulley. And then same thing with this friggin' tensioner. Like, made in the USA, that's great. The picture showed a metal pulley, and that's not what we got. So I'm not overly impressed with that. But for now, we may run it. And I'll see if I can find another, a good pulley, or another one of these that's made that has metal for a pulley instead of plastic. Because unfortunately, the one that came off is completely roached. So, belt finally showed up. And then, so I was going to order the parts to repair this alternator, because it's hard to tell, but it is noisy when I spin it up. It was a reman at some point as well. Looks like a Canadian Tire one, judging by the part number. And you can see, like, it, I don't know if you'll hear it, but this bearing in the back is definitely very squeaky. And so is the front one. But Rock Auto had one of these Wilson alternators for this truck, and it was actually less money than I could buy just the bearings for. Bearings and basically a rebuild kit for this, bearings and bushings. And it was actually cheaper to buy a complete manufactured alternator than it was just to buy the parts to fix this one. So that was kind of a no-brainer. It's already been blasted and painted and the whole works, right? So I'll hang on to this one for a core, and if I ever need to, I can either rebuild it or have it rebuilt. Okay, so assembling the alternator is pretty easy. So on the bottom here, it slides through, take our long bolt, it goes through, and then you can tilt it up. This top one goes up top. Then the nut goes on the back side of this bolt. And then we can deal with the top bracket here. First I'll go ahead and tighten these up. This one's a 13, that one's a 10 millimeter. Okay, so on the back here, hopefully you can see this. There's a hole here in the back of the alternator, and there's one here in the intake. So there's a funky looking little bracket here, which I've already taken and sandblasted and everything. And it is what goes on here. So it goes in something like this, right? I might actually have it upside down here. Which is a possibility, considering I have the distinction of being human. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to take and put our 2 bolts in there. And that is the alternator mounted. I will get my fat fingers out of here for you in 2 seconds. See? Like this. So that gets tightened up there. Okay, for the plastic idler, if you do end up using one of these, you're going to replace the bolt, and then there's a spacer here that, if I can get back out of here, gets installed into the front of the pulley to take up some of the space inside the bearing. So make sure that's in there and put a new bolt in it. It's an M10 course, so 1.5 thread. So I'll put that on, we'll tighten it up. And it's about 35 millimeter thread length. Okay, so for the tensioner has a pin here that actually aligns it. In my case, I had to drill out a piece of the old alignment pin. And what I've done is, on the bolt, I've put a little bit of anti-seize, and that is because we have two dissimilar metals going together. So we'll line up our pin, and then we'll line up our bolt, and we'll tighten the bolt down. Next thing we get to do is put our belt on. Okay, hopefully you can see kind of how the belt goes here. So it comes down, goes around our idler over here, comes around it, comes up over top of the water pump, down, crosses over, goes around the crank, and then comes back over top of our tensioner. And then from there, we bring it, and it comes over top of our alternator like that. And what we'll do is we will just go around quick here, and we will check that we have the belt kind of sitting in all the grooves just before we take all the tension off. Okay, and we should be good. And that is our belt installed. Okay, so here's a little better view. I did go back and paint the bolt for the tensioner, just because, well, why wouldn't I? There's our brackets up top. Said belt goes down and around here. And over on this side, there's our idler. A trick I was taught by a guy I worked with is always to face the belt out. Doesn't probably change anything, but what the hell? We're already here now, right? Now, I know this video is kind of crap, but, well, that's kind of how it goes. Hopefully this week, there should be a lot more progress, because I got a whole bunch of little things to do. And once I get them out of the way, we'll be moving on to the next big thing.